Welcome to Family Health, Kinesiology 4330, and in this video lecture we will be covering what I believe to be one of the key components of not only family health but of marital health and well-being, which is financial awareness. Now, I'm by no means a financial planner, and I have certainly made some bad financial mistakes that have threatened the security and health of my family, and it's actually a goal of mine to have an expert in the field address some of these habits of highly successful families and recognize the pitfalls that can set families back and even lead to their demise. This figure shows some of the emotionally driven, unhealthy financial motivations that often plague us as a result of the emotional triangle of fear, guilt, and shame. As we go around the emotional triangle, we can see how we end up spending money to address the areas of our lives that we wish we could control or compensate for, including the following areas as a result of this type of distress, remorse, and humiliation. We could be trying to avoid loneliness. We could be trying to make up for a traumatic childhood or make a false impression, or try to distract ourselves from emotional pain, try to feel loved, or try to distract ourselves from seeing our true selves, or even trying to solve any deeper type of emotional problem through financial irresponsibility. So shame is a feeling of being flawed at our very core. Guilt is a feeling of remorse for having done wrong in our actions or inactions, and fear is the feeling of anxiety or apprehension over uncertainty in our lives. Shame, guilt, and fear underline many of the unhealthy financial decisions in our lives. Many in the United States have fallen into the trap of seeing pleasure as the best goal and a purchase as the best way to acquire that pleasure. Thus, they get on a treadmill of purchasing which cannot provide long-lasting pleasure in most cases, and requires new and more varied purchases to renew that short-term pleasure over and over again. The hedonistic treadmill would not be a major problem if one were very wealthy, but for the average middle-class person, the marketing pressures to buy and the patterns of seeing a purchase as a path to happiness and the availability of easy-to-obtain credit make it very difficult to get off the hedonistic treadmill. This pattern can be very destructive financially and can undermine the family system as a whole. Entitlement is a feeling of wanting something for nothing, and of being justified in having your wants met, and of feeling excluded from the same rules that bind most members of society financially. This figure portrays what the layering of society might look like if the United States population were divided into three groups: the top 10% of wealthy people, the next 20% of upper class, and the remaining 70% of middle and lower classes. The top 10% of our country owns the lion's share of all the wealth available to be owned in the United States. They own as much as 100 times the average United States person's wealth. Theirs is a life of high levels of property, power, and prestige, and they can often make more in a year than most of us do in a lifetime. The next 20%, which are upper class people, hold the high-ranking jobs, run for elected offices, and they also run major corporations at high levels, such as CEO position. These types of jobs pay more and require more education and require more abstract thought and critical thinking, and allow for more self-directed autonomy in their daily activities. The blue area are the largest category, which includes the remainder of us, and we fall into some layer of this economic layering, whether it's upper middle class, working class, labor class, or the poor. Poverty. This definition of poverty has been the same definition of poverty since the 1930s, with only a few adjustments. We would say that a person who is near poverty has more income than somebody who is in poverty, but not much more than 25%. And absolute poverty is the level of poverty where individuals and families cannot sustain food, shelter, warmth, and safety needs. Budgeting. A couple main categories in personal and corporate budgets are fixed expenses that don't fluctuate and variable expenses that can change from month to month. In most families, our variable expenses can be as simple as the differences in month to month from our heating and air conditioning. Most families get a natural spike in their food and clothing expenses at the start of every school year, whether you have children in school or not. The wise budgeter will foresee the variable expenses, plan, and won't be caught by the unexpected expenses. The rule of threes, which is described in our text. First rule says save 3 months worth of income and keep it in the bank. That means save enough to meet all of your fixed debts, such as rent, mortgage, car, medical insurance, etc., so that you can keep your family afloat if you suffer a job loss or crisis. The second rule of the rule of threes is to have only one credit card with no bonus or rewards program. Keep a zero balance on it and set your credit limit to what it might cost to pay 3 months worth of bills, including your rent, mortgage, and car payments. I'm not suggesting that you never pay your bills with a credit card, but I'm suggesting that you use your card for transactions or travel and have a lower limit on it so you can more readily control your spending. Don't ever use your credit card for long-term debt. It should be a tool for short-term financial matters. And the third rule is whenever there is a consumer item that you really want, that's expensive, wait 3 full days before you buy it. I've had students disagree with me on this, saying that some things go on sale and you'll miss a good buy if you wait. But my point is, if you haven't planned for it and saved for it and budgeted for it, then a 3-day cooling off period may help you prevent unwanted and unneeded debt. Keep that in mind, that if we're marketed to the retail industry with an approach of hurry, the sale ends soon, then most likely this marketing has triggered the use of our rational and emotional decision-making processes, which is the limbic part of our brain, which is often hard to control, and we might rush out, buy something, and feel like we're actually being responsible purchasing agents, even if we never really needed or wanted what the sale is selling, and we end up with what is commonly known as buyer's remorse. There's some things on home ownership here. Home equity is the value of the home that is higher than the amount that is still owed on the home loan. A mortgage is a bank lending note that you pay toward the ownership of your home, and the lending companies offer various financial packages for consumers to choose from. A fixed rate mortgage means that the interest rate on your home remains the same until the loan is paid off. A variable rate mortgage can change as the market changes. An adjustable rate mortgage means that after an initial period, for instance the first 2 years, the interest rate can rise at the discretion of the lender. The borrower benefits if the interest rate falls, but the consumer loses out if the interest rate increases. A short sale is selling your house for what it is less than what is actually owed on the home, and you end up taking a loss. You end up being what they call upside down in your mortgage, and you're willing to take a financial loss for what is owed on the home. This is the case when a home is purchased during a false financial boom, and you can sell your home at a loss in lieu of foreclosure. So some strategies and rules for sound financial family practices, which include beware of materialism and avoid the hedonistic treadmill. Use debt wisely, carefully controlled credit card use and secured loans for cars or mortgages. Guard your credit score. Have a 5, 10, 15, and 20-year financial plan, which you want to go over in your financial awareness project. Don't buy in a hurry. Use the rule of threes. Save for emergencies up to 3 months. Don't play the extra money game. Money is real, plastic checks, cash, or electronic. So if you have an extra paycheck, if you're getting paid every 2 weeks and you have a 3-paycheck month, that's not extra money. That's money you still have to budget from month to month. Save, invest, and purchase. Buy low, sell high, and use your 401ks, especially if your company matches funds on your 401k. Become well versed in your guilt, shame, and the fear issues about money. Most resemble the same issues about sex, love, punishment, and food in your life. Put your investments in hard-to-reach places like certificates of deposit, funds, bonds, etc. Never fall for the something-for-nothing con game. Something always costs something. Get expert help when you're uncertain about things, such as from a financial planner. Even your own bank has advisors that can help as part of your service of being a member of the bank or lending institution, especially with things like credit union. Treat your money with dignity and respect, and it will respond in kind. So we're going to play a little game here called Truth or Myth. I'd like you to join along with me. I'm going to ask a question, and you can tell me if it's true or false, or true or a myth. If I loan money to a friend or relative, will I be helping them? Truth or myth? No, that's a myth. The truth is the relationship might become strained or destroyed as a result of lending money to them. Try not to mix business with personal relationships. Next truth or myth question. By co-signing a loan, I'm helping out a friend or relative. Truth or myth? It is a myth. Truth is the bank requires a co-signer because the person getting the loan isn't likely to repay the loan. So be ready to pay the loan and have your credit harmed because your name is on the loan. So they would qualify if they were a good risk for the bank. So by not getting a loan, the bank considers them a high risk, and you shouldn't take that on either. Truth or myth? Companies that provide cash advances, rent to own, title brokers, and tote-the-note car lots are needed services for lower-income people to get ahead. I think you're starting to get the pattern here. That is a myth. And the truth is these are greed-based schemes that aren't needed. They prey upon the poor and only benefit the companies that run them, and they are basically run like loan sharks. Truth or myth? Playing the lotto and other forms of gambling will make me rich. It is a myth. The truth is the lottery and Powerball are a tax on the poor, and many winners of the lottery are now bankrupt or have had financial or family problems. Truth or myth? Car payments are a way of life, and you'll always have one if you want to have a reliable car. That's a myth. Stay away from car payments by driving a reliable used car, and that's what the typical millionaire does as well. It's how they become millionaires, by not spending more than they need to for the items that they use. Truth or myth? Leasing your car is what sophisticated financial people do, and you should always lease things that go down in value, and then there are tax advantages. It's a myth. Consumer Reports, Smart Money Magazine, and Smart Calculations will tell you that the car lease is the most expensive way to finance and operate your vehicle. And keep in mind, if you do put a lot of miles on your car every year, there are some mileage restrictions on leases that are very limiting. Truth or myth? You can get a good deal on a new car. Myth. A new car typically loses 60% of its value in the first 4 years, and this is the largest purchase that most consumers make that go down in value. Truth or myth? The home equity loan is good because it's a tax deduction and is a good substitute for an emergency fund. That is a myth. You shouldn't go into debt for emergencies. You should use your rule of threes, which is saving 3 months in advance for any unexpected expenses such as emergencies, including appliances that break down or car repairs that are needed. Truth or myth? When I buy a home, I will take out a 30-year mortgage, and I have promised to pay off extra principal each month on the home. That's a myth. Sick kids, car breakdowns, high electric bills, rising gas costs are all unforeseen costs that take away our extra money. And never take out more than a 15-year fixed rate loan on a home. That way you don't end up being a slave to your mortgage. Truth or myth? You need to take out a credit card to build your credit. That's a myth. Open credit card accounts with zero balances count against you, as well as car payments when qualifying for a home mortgage. So it's easy to show your financial responsibility by showing your history of paying your bills on time as well. Now, just to talk a little bit about investments. Again, I am not a financial planner, and I do suggest that you do speak to a financial planner or somebody who is well versed on these items, but just some descriptions of what some basic investments are. Money market mutual funds are low risk market accounts that you can write checks on. They're what they call liquid accounts that you have access to. It's a deposit account that is considered a savings account for some purposes, but it is an account which checks can be written subject to certain restrictions. They work well as emergency funds. Next up are loans. There are secured loans and unsecured loans. So loans that have some type of collateral, so the risk to the lender is minimized, are secured loans. And unsecured loans, there is no collateral associated with them and typically are given based on individual credit scores. Single stocks. When you're buying a stock, you're buying a small piece of ownership in a company. Your return comes as the company increases in value or as it pays you as a part owner some of its profits, which are called dividends. Bonds. A bond is a debt instrument where the company owes you money, and your return is the fluctuation in price and the interest paid. Our certificates of deposits, or CDs, it's a time deposit with very conservative or low interest. CDs typically require a minimum deposit and may offer higher rates for larger deposits. Withdrawal before maturity or by the time they are full value is realized is usually subject to a substantial penalty, so you really don't want to withdraw from them, or else you're going to potentially end up with less than what you put into it. It's a good way to hold cash without the temptation of accessing it easily. So if you know you're not going to need the money and you want to put it in a secure place, a CD or certificate of deposit is a good way to do that. Again, it's intended that the CD be held until maturity, at which time the money can be withdrawn together with the accrued interest rate that it's accumulated. Mutual funds are where investors pool their money in to invest in a particular portfolio of different types of investments, some higher risk, some lower risk. Your return comes as the value of the fund is increased, and they tend to be good long-term investments. Again, bankruptcy is a federally authorized procedure that allows families and businesses to be relieved from liability from their debts and arrange partial repayments through court-ordered relief strategies. But they essentially do protect you from your creditors. And just some closing thoughts on investments. If you don't understand an investment well enough to teach it to someone else, don't buy it. I can think of in the past, we've had some students report on things that were hard for me to understand, such as Bitcoin, and I didn't feel comfortable investing in things like that. And the key is just to build your wealth slowly. It's hard to make a lot of money overnight. Most investments occur with time and with good decision-making processes. In terms of your financial awareness project, it is 125 points to start thinking about the topic or your personal budget that you will be reporting on. It's a 3-page paper, type double-spaced, 12 font, Times New Roman, and proofread. Again, it would be great if you go over your personal budget, speak in terms of percentages and generalities. You don't have to get into specifics in terms of the amounts you make, but if you can discuss where your money goes and know where your money goes, that would be the best. And give us some idea of what your personal goals are in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 30 years ahead, maybe what your job will be like, where you envision yourself being. Whoops, it looks like we got cut off a little bit too soon. I just want to make some closing comments here. I want to make sure that you know that if you do a topic paper for your financial awareness project, that you want to include 2 true false and 2 multiple choice questions with answers provided. The paper needs to be in either a PDF or a Word format. If you do it in a different format, it needs to be converted to those prior to submitting into Blackboard, or else I won't be able to grade it. Otherwise, I really look forward to reading your financial awareness projects and learning a little bit more about your goals and aspirations financially. Miss seeing you. Looking forward to getting this hopefully over soon, and maybe seeing you on campus afterward. But stay healthy, and you guys take care. Thanks.